Trading futures and options on futures involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all traders and investors. Oftentimes in futures trading, you have a high combination of leverage and volatility. And although this could be an equation for opportunity, it's also an equation for risk. So be careful. Only fund your futures trading account with risk capital. My personal definition of risk capital is money I could afford to lose, doesn't change my lifestyle, or overly stress me out. As human beings, we make bad decisions when we're under stress, so be in a good spot. Remember, micro contracts could be friends. Take it easy on the day trade margins. You get plenty of leverage without maxing out on those day trade margins on a regular basis. We'll be taking a look at a real-time simulated live NinjaTrader trading platform today, and none of this should be construed as trade or investment advice. Past performance not indicative of future results.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Technical Analysis Explained live stream. I'm your host, Tom Schneider, CMT with NinjaTrader. And on this live stream, we like to go into a deeper dive with technical analysis, indicators, studies, concepts. And today's no different. We have been very, very blessed to have a great guest on, first time to this show. But he is known as the Pivot King, and that's what piqued my attention, and just happened to be a friend of one of our other show hosts, Anthony Crudelli. Anthony set us up, and I want to introduce you, the viewer, to our very special guest. We will be talking about pivots today, Stephen Marcantonio, the Pivot King. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you, Tom, for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And
glad to be a part of the show.
Yeah, I just go back to a couple weeks ago when we finally got to meet. I know we've been emailing and we had such a great conversation that I know this is going to be a great show. Really excited for this. This is going to be the highlight of my week. So hope I love your background. I love what's happening in the back.
Yeah. Thank you. That's my wife's PC behind me. Yeah. He trades with me, so yeah, we have fun.
Right. We can't see your screens. Your screens are.
I'm looking at them now. But, yeah, she sits behind me, and it's nice to trade with your wife. We some people can't, but we can, and we root for each other, right? And she helps. So it's good to have your wife help and someone that's that you love and cherish. So it makes a good trading day every day.
That's great. And we talk about this on our shows that sometimes trading can be a lonely business, right? If you don't have somebody like your significant other, your spouse with you, or even just a buddy, right? Yeah, it can be a lonely thing. So that's great. You're blessed to have that too. But really, you caught my eye before I even talked to Anthony Crudelli about you on Twitter, right? So which is funny because pivots to me is something I always was able to have success with when I talk to other traders. I do consulting for traders, and this was with another software platform, and pivots resonated with the traders. And when I mean that, what I mean by that is traders are probably known, and hedge funds, institutions, they're not a very grateful bunch. And what I mean by that is it's very transactional. If you have something to show me, great. If not, move on. And I would just get these emails like a month later. Hey, thanks for showing me pivots. I mean, it really resonates with traders because it's very helpful. But before we get into all that, because I'm just so excited to talk about pivots, let's talk about you, Stephen. Kind of where are you? How'd you get into the business? What's kind of your history with that, and what brought you to pivots?
And so back in the day, I've always been interested in financial markets, and I was one of those types, just probably like everybody else, got in and listening to people are like, yeah, they're gonna buy this stock and buy this stock, and just probably like everybody else, got the shots. Lost a boatload of money. That's for sure. And I'm the type of person that doesn't give up. I had a lot of sleepless nights. I'm sure people listening to this share the same story. It was one of those journeys where I learned through myself through the School of Hard Knocks and listening to other people and just looking at other things out there. And I happened to utilize some things that's out there, and then utilize something that I worked for myself, such as the indicators that I built for myself, such as back testing them and using pivots along with those. I've used a lot of the other indicators as well through this journey. I've went through a lot of speed bumps. Like if you're talking about someone that made mistakes, you're looking at them. And I'm very stubborn, and got way better. Training will definitely change your life once you go through these. So if anybody listening actually, lost a lot of money and made a lot of mistakes, you're not alone. There's a lot of people out there, such as myself, that got into those situations, and you learn from it. I'm the type of person that fights. I'm a fighter. I don't give up. I find out what mistakes I made wrong, and I start just analyzing. And honestly, Tom, I think if I hadn't taken those shots, I wouldn't have been able to come up with what I've came up with or be where I am right now, because it put a fire under it really got me really looking into what I did wrong. And one of the things I did wrong was just listening to people. And then now I look back, and I'm not going to name them, but certain people, I look back and be like, how did I ever listen to that? And I think that's what a lot of people do now. So, I could post a probable setup, and it's what that setup was, a probable setup. And if it doesn't pan out, it's one of those situations where someone's going to need to be able to manage the trade on their own. Like in this game, you can't have anybody hold your hand. And if you're expecting someone to hold your hand, then I really highly don't recommend you trade, because you might get lucky, but in the end, it's not going to last for you. So I close out with that.
Yeah, Steve, we talk about that. I think those are great words, which is, you can only lead somebody so far, but, they have to understand, especially new traders, that these are probability
Right.
mark or situations, right? There's nothing 100%,
Nothing.
and nobody should ever be claiming that, right? If you see that, you've got to run the other way. And when you say you listen to people, it sounds like you meant you were listening to them without questioning them.
That's
right?
I was in the you know what it is? It's because it's so viral that I think it's worse now. But everybody wants everything on a silver platter. That's the problem. I think a lot of people are busy with their job, busy with bills, and in this game, you're getting into a shark tank, and there's a lot of sharks that want to eat you. So that's what I didn't learn before, was I was a fish, and I needed to build myself up to be a shark. And the only way you could build yourself to be a shark is a lot of screen time, a lot of journaling, a lot of, staying up, seeing what you did wrong, admit what you did wrong. Don't marry positions. I'm more of an intraday trader, Tom. I have a larger picture. Like, if do you want me to share my screen, I'll give you an example.
Sure.
All right. So am I sharing right now, or?
Yep.
Okay. So this is ES. And if you could see on Anthony's show, I gave a 44.30, which was a probable setup. And it was really good for a turn down. But the non-farm payrolls just spooted up. And if you look at the CTAs, let me show you some. I don't know if you could see it. You'll see here where this was kind of going viral, where people were $95 billion worth of buying in this last month. I saw a lot of buying within the last 2 weeks. And a lot of these CTAs were short at the October lows. So this move in ES could have just been them short covering. They were short at the lows, and now they're buying near the highs. So that's why I said you got to ask yourself, everybody talks about who's buying, but no one ever talks about who's dumping. So where there's $95 billion worth, that means there was $95 billion worth of people selling. Now, if you look back in the beginning of November, actually November 1st, Mark Zuckerberg from Meta has started selling his shares. Amazon, and he hasn't done that for 2 years, by the way. Bezos starts selling his shares. So a lot of these insiders that have millions and millions and millions and millions of shares, you need people to buy those shares. So I question when I see moves, especially in a V shape with what just happened, I just don't question who bought. I also question the other side, who sold. And I use those metrics into my charts and my oscillators and my indicators. For example, if you look at my oscillator, like look at this, right? Look where it was here, right? And look at the move. So do you really want to be buying up here? Now, you could be one of those traders where you buy and you hold. Where I get into, I'm more of an intraday trader. So I use this big range of pivots, and I'm more of an intraday trader where I'll use lower time frames and I'll just do some scalping of 8 points, 10 points. And I shut my trades down at the end of the day. Unfortunately, though, last week I got stuck short. It's fine. 40, I'm fine with the position, but majority of the times, I'd say 90% of the time, I intraday trade. I'll look for setups on the lower time frames. And at the end of the day, I shut down my computer. I like to sleep at night. But you have a lot of people that start swing trading and, it's going higher, it's going higher, it's going higher, it's going higher, but they never sell, they never take profit, they never move to entry. And that's why I advise people, if you caught this run, you'll see people that don't sell and they won't even move, they won't even take 50% down. And what I'm saying is with a move like this, and especially in these markets, it can change overnight. And then you not taking that profit down, you not moving to entry, take 50% down. Let's say they went long at 43.90. They're waiting for new highs. That's the type of trader when I first started out, where I used to listen to people and I'll be like, I'm going to hold this position to new highs. So then you look back and you say, wait a second, as you learn through your trading journey is, what if I took profit along the way? What if I took profit at the A pivot? What if I took profit at the L pivot? What if I took profit at the B pivot and then wait for 25% for a T? And if it goes back to the A where I entered, I'm out at entry, but I still made 75% of the profit. So a lot of these retail traders that just start out, they'll just hold the position to new highs. I don't know. Maybe it does go to new highs. Maybe it does. And then you're lucky. But I can tell you one thing. You're going to get the shots one day because it's not going there. For example, gold. You've had people calling gold, which I love gold, by the way. You got people calling gold 5,000 like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So those people will never sell. Never. So gold went up to 2,000 and it went back up to 1,400. And they're like, and they started adding on the way down, listening to people saying it's going to go higher. So they didn't do the homework themselves. They're listening to other people that they probably don't even know.
Right.
And what I'm trying to tell people is learn this on your own. And no matter how long it takes, don't do what I did or majority of the people did. Whereas you're just looking at one person and you're saying that this guy is going to make me a lot of money. If you believe that, then you're going to get yourself into some serious trouble. Now, you have Bitcoiners, for example, Bitcoin. There's people that buy Bitcoin, but they'll never sell because they're saying it's going to 100,000. What if it went to zero? What if you bought Bitcoin at 30,000 and went to 65,000, which we had a target there at 66,000, and then it tanked to 20,000? These guys will never sell. That's how they made all that money.
Right.
See, a lot of people that make a lot of money in the market didn't even know how they made it. They just bought something and they will never sell. So I remember back in the day, it was the year 2000, and this was in the 2000 boom. And I was at a cafe having a coffee, and a guy from $10,000 made $1.2 million. Oof. It was one of those tech stocks. And it got me thinking, like, I can do this, you know? And he never sold. And I remember when the crash happened in 2000, I saw him again. He lost everything plus more because he was buying lower. How did he make that money? He didn't know what he was doing. He just held. But he wouldn't have made that money if he never held.
Right.
What I'm saying is you might get lucky trading, you might. But in the end, you won't survive. And that's what happened to me. I've, got lucky, and then you didn't get lucky. And then you're looking at trading like it's spinning on the roulette wheel. I don't look at that anymore. Trading's not gambling. Trading's based on probabilities.
Yeah. So Steve, let's talk about pivots, because that's a part of
Sure. I was going
decision.
there. I was going off track.
Right.
I could talk about this for an hour, but go ahead, Bill.
And I know we had a great conversation. Pivots, for those of you who are encountering this for the first time, I'll just give a quick recap of what traditionally pivots are, which are levels based on a different time frame. So if Steve talks about lower frequency goes into an intraday chart, he might look at daily pivots, right? And those daily pivots were originally how pivots came about, which was traders would come off the floor, right, when everything was trading in a pit or on the floor, and they didn't have computers for sure. They might have had calculators. I doubt it. Nothing they could put in their pocket. But what they had was a pencil and a piece of paper. And all they needed was 3 numbers. They just needed yesterday's high, low, and close. And from there, they could determine levels based on those 3 values. You can certainly look up. I won't go into the math here. And those are what's considered floor pivots or traditional pivots. Now, what I've seen is they are very well regarded because a lot of traders know about them. There are levels that kind of because other traders know about them, they become somewhat of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Not saying that they will go to those levels. There are 7 different levels, so can't go to all levels. But uncannily, sometimes in big moves, you'll see them blow right through 1 or 2 levels and just kind of sit there at another level. Now, those are traditional pivots. What I really find interesting about pivots is when the innovators, and I'm going to put you in there, Steve, the innovators find a way to make those pivots their own. And I know Woody is a common one. Tom DeMark, who I've worked for in the past, he made his own pivots. And Steven, you're no different. The difference is, of course, how you make them your own, right? But the concept is somewhat of the same idea from a higher level, which is Steve has a daily chart up here. So I'm assuming these pivots are from a higher time frame.
That's right.
And if you had an intraday, you might use these same pivots on an intraday, or you might go to a daily chart. But the idea, the basic idea of pivots is if the market hits one of these pivot levels, it's either a reflection, it's consolidation, or it goes through. But when you have reflection or consolidation, you have a target in the form of the next pivot if that happens.
So here's an example. So this V-shaped move, that 4430 on Anthony's show was defended 6 times.
Yes.
And then they sliced it, non-farm. And then not just sliced it, they were slicing other pivots. So here's an example is when I do have a pivot, especially on a bigger time frame, and they get sliced, it means something else is going on. For example, circuit breakers, like on the Trump breaker, I caught that move down and hit it hard too. The Bree exit, those weren't reacting off pivots. They were slicing them.
Yeah.
And just for your listeners, that is one tell to see if something bigger is going on. So that 4430, for example, when I got sliced, it's like, I got to get out of this one. You got to get out and actually go long and ride it. But there's I like when markets breathe, Tom. It's just something with me. This is my this is what I like. I like when markets, there's normal price action, nice breathing. And when something goes sporadically and just moves, it like that's not normal in my eyes, I move on to something else. And that's what I think other people have a hard time doing is when they're used to trading one particular security, they won't move off another one. If you're uncomfortable with trading ES, like I'm actually like the Russell now better than ES. And if I'm not comfortable with the security, I'll just move on to another one. There's lots of other securities that you could trade other than the one that you're trading. For example, people trade gold and that's all they trade because it's gold. And what I'm saying is, the market gives you so many more other things that you could do. If there's a better setup somewhere else, I would move to that somewhere else. That's why I have a lot of screens. One of the reasons for a lot of screens is different time frames. So this is my bigger picture. This is basically what I do every morning. I look at the bigger picture, Tom, but I don't trade between these pivots. I just look at to say, okay, where is this market going today on a bigger picture? And then I take that. What news is coming today that could trigger something, from the L pivot automatically hit the B pivot? And as you can tell, it hit it like beautifully. And then the L pivot defended here to the tick. And this is my line in the sand. If it really takes this L, we're going to the B, vice versa. Today it hit the upper band. Notice that it clipped exactly my upper band and then boom, puked. Yeah. So these are the things that we look for. I just don't combine the pivots. I combine them with indicators. So that's the way I look at it. So I look at the bigger picture, but I'm an intraday trader. I get the microscope out and I start looking for probable setups on the lower time frames, and I get in and I get out. And if it doesn't work, I get out until I get to, and I wait a lot. And I wait for that setup. I wait for price to come to me, always. I don't chase. That's the type of person I am. And that's one of the reasons why, like this move, I don't chase. There's people that do. The CTAs chase. I just showed you an example. But but I'm in more of an intraday trader, looking for a setup. And when I'm done the day, I close my positions. Very rare do I keep a position on for a day or two, but I have. For example, I'm in one. I'm not happy about it, but I'm able to manage it. And if I get into a point where it's bothering me, I'll get out. But I'm fine with it now. And that's the thing is traders need to know their limits, know when they're wrong, and know how to manage their trade. You could be wrong, Tom, in a trade and still be right. It's all in the way you manage a trade. For example, I know a guy in our community where he did a hedge, and his hedge was making a lot more money than his position holding. And he was just focused on his hedge. I couldn't even believe it. He did options way out of the money and they clipped. And I'm like, take some down. And then he hit his other position. He actually hit a double whammy.
Wow.
So people would be saying to him, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. But a couple of days later, that wrong position turned into a fantastic trade. Right. So was he wrong? And that's what I think a lot of people have a hard time dealing with. People these days will look at your position and say, you're wrong. And then 2 days later, you're right. And I think people need to stop doing that because that's not, everybody trades differently. There's many ways to skin a cat. Tom, you might trade a different way than I do, and you're continuously profitable. Who's anybody to say that what you're doing doesn't work when it works for you, or what somebody else is doing, whether they use Elliott Wave, whether they don't use pivots or they use cycles. If it's working for them, all the power to you. But all I'm saying is if someone wants to learn in these markets, pivots are a great to me, and I'm sure to you, Tom, I think they're the best thing out there. Next to, for me, that's why I love pivots. They're my number one on my list. Pivots are number one.
So I'm right there with you. And a couple comments. You mentioned the Trump breaker and the Brexit.
Yes. Those are beautiful.
ironically, I was in, or coincidentally, I should say, for both events, I was in Toronto visiting, and it just happened election night 2016, and then of course in June of 2016, just happened to be traveling to Toronto. I know you were in Toronto as well, so just an interesting thing. It wasn't planned by any means; it just happened that way. But I think what's really key, and you can see it on your chart, is you don't trade them in a vacuum, right? You use other indicators. You use an oscillator. You use your volatility bands, right?
Yes.
You might have some moving averages on there,
Yes.
and that's something I would stress every show if I remembered, which is there's no one single holy grail answer. If anybody tells you that, run the other way.
No.
But
You know what I always say, Tom? Sorry to interrupt you. Do you
Yeah.
know my favorite line
What's that?
I came up with? You are your own holy grail. So a lot of people that look for a holy grail, you're the holy grail.
That is
Because
great.
you could have a Lamborghini and I could have a Ford Mustang, and we could line up and I could race you every single day and I win.
Yeah.
And you're wondering, how are you winning when my horsepower is double the horsepower you have? Because it's the driver. That's why drivers of Formula One get paid the big bucks,
Right.
because they all have the same vehicles. It's the driver.
Yeah.
So you are your own holy grail. And how do you make yourself a holy grail? You got to work your butt off, never give up, always learn, and learn from the right people. How do you know you're learning from the right people? Well, you got to look at what they're doing and seeing what they're doing and apply it to your journaling, studying, and say, you know what? I really like this guy compared to all those other people, because all those other people just talk the same tune. But this person seems to be talking a different tune that relates with my experience, where I've went through all those bumps and got hit hard. I find people that I've talked to, traders, which there's people in my community that have been trading for 40 years. And they have, these guys, some of them have gigantic funds. I'll leave it like huge. And I like to pick their brain.
Right.
But like, they're not, see, it's harder for them, Tom. Like, you got billions of dollars, you got to get out of a position. For me and you, it's just a click. You know what I mean? I'm out, boom.
Right.
Them, there goes the strategy. You got to now incorporate your strategy, and you're going against some other big fish, and you can't just get out with that kind of money in a fund at one price. So you got to plan different. Your strategy's got to be different. And that's why a lot of people will listen to these funds and they don't understand these funds can't get out at one price.
Right.
It might take them a week, some of them. And when you got these funds dumping that kind of money, these other funds look at it and they might be turned into fish, because funds attack other funds. But that's for another show. But us guys, Tom, we're just little crumb. I'm a little ant on the floor, Tom. You can't even see. And I'm happy with that.
That goes back
to, I'm happy with taking a little bit of crumbs. You know what I mean?
Oh, of course. Of course.
I'm happy with that. I'm happy. But
that goes back to your point about, I think it was Zuckerberg, right?
Yeah. Well, look at that. Yeah.
He's been selling 13 million shares of Facebook for every week for the last 2 years. And
can you imagine?
Right. Whatever the numbers are.
He still has millions left.
Right.
How's he going to get rid of those? He's not. But
he can't go and say, I'm going to put it all on, I'm going to sell it all at one time. Same thing with the funds, right? Because they'll move the market if they do that. So
it's not just him. There's other people with millions of shares. He's got competition.
Right.
So it's a different game when you get into the funds, especially funds that have big funds. And I speak to them, some of them, because I want to really know, how do you get out? And they're like, well, we got to, a lot of the funds that are told, I think a lot of the funds which just happened in the last 2 weeks were told to buy. That's my personal opinion, but that's for another story. But
I think, Stephen, I want to thank you because we've run up against time, but I know we could be talking for a long time, because we've done that before, and it was such a great thing to do.
I think it was 2 hours. My wife's like, you talked to him for 2 hours. I'm like, seriously? So
yeah, it was
flies when you're having a good conversation.
It does. It does. And this was no different. I want to thank you for coming on. But, in case people are interested in finding more out, about what you do and who you are, where might they look?
You can visit the besttraders.com. That's THEBESTTRADERS.com, or contact me on Twitter, which is at the Pivot King. And my wife is at the Pivot Queen. If you do email the site, you will be speaking to my wife. But we're just a bunch of traders that like to exchange probable setups in our community. And I love it. It keeps me busy waiting for those setups every day. And you could reach out to me there and become part of the community if you'd like.
That's great. I love it. And that idea of a community, just it benefits so many people, right? That's the point about it.
I should bring that up, actually. If I had to turn back time, I think being part of a community, you'll be able to learn a lot.
Yeah.
Being with a bunch of people, seeing how they exchange setups and work with each other. It's just like a family. It's just like a business. When you're part of a team, there's no one-man shop. I'm part of a team. You have to work together. And if somebody, Tom, I'm sure you've worked part of teams where people can't work together. There's always that one guy that I know this. He doesn't last long, because team players last long in this business. And by exchanging setups, I like this because of this, and and especially when everybody takes a setup and it works out, it's the best feeling because you did it as a team.
Yeah, totally agree. Thanks again, Steve.
Thank you, Tom.
We'll have you back on.
Absolutely.
In the new year. I want to wish you and your wife, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we'll look for good things in the new year.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Tom.
Oh, my pleasure entirely. Thanks a lot, Stephen. And thanks to the viewers for coming and watching the show. We will finish up the day with Mike Burke at bars closing. In the meantime, have a great trading day.
Take care.